We are live streaming the show on SpiceFM KE, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. We are on SpiceFM around the country, 94.4 in Nairobi, Mombasa, 87.9, Kisumu, 102.5, 96.0 in Nakuru, 96.7 in Eldoret, Nyeri, 90.9, 97.7 in Malindi. And for the next 1 hour, we are also live on KTN Home. We begin the hour with the day's proverb.
A healthy person who keeps begging for food is an insult to a generous farmer. Clearly a proverb from an agrarian community.
A healthy person who keeps begging for food is an insult to a generous farmer.
Yes.
And I said, it doesn't take into context what made this person come begging for food.
It's a proverb,
Failed rains.
not a policy statement.
Yeah, I mean, it's an insult. It's like trying to also condemn the beggar, saying the beggar is lazy.
Remember, I prefaced it by saying a healthy person, not a person, healthy.
Yeah.
Able-bodied, as we like calling them.
Yes.
Assuming that there's nothing wrong with this person.
Absolutely.
They're healthy, yes, but
They are not mentally adult. They are not physically adult. So, Eric, you know this drought issue?
Yeah.
And the issue surrounding it is a bone Eric is not going to let go.
No.
Anyway, we have a guest, Eric. Let's leave the bone. And
Because
the
we
guest
have an
and-
issue, and our guest will also tell us his perspective of this.
Yes.
ADEN DUALE is a member of parliament for Garissa Township. He was the first leader of the majority in the National Assembly under the 2010 Constitution. He served as leader for the entire first term, and then he served as leader for a couple of months into the 12th
Couple of
parliament. Yes.
12 years.
See, years the months, Pia.
Hapana.
Okay, years.
Months gives the impression.
That is less than a year.
Well, yeah, and I say couple, it's two.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, but if you say years, we know you've got 12 months in a year. If
He
you say
was-
years, then you have many, many months beyond 12.
He was a leader as well in this 12th parliament. He joins us in the studio. Karibu sana into the Situation Room.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's good to have you here. Welcome to the hot seat.
Yeah, asante sana. It's good to be here.
It's been a while.
Finally.
We've been wanting to host you, and we've been having this conversation, but things keep happening. But karibu.
Asante sana.
Familiar.
I took a break from many things. Yeah, after I exited the coveted constitutional office. So I had to go back and re-strategize, and one of the things I'm doing is I'm writing my memo. So
Oh, that will be interesting.
yeah. So hopefully next year, just 2 months to the election, I want to launch that memo.
That will be an
So I've
interesting
been
one to
busy.
look at. So you're busy. You're
busy
keeping yourself
trying
busy.
to put down what many people don't want to say about the politics of Jubilee, the coveted office of Parliament, and many things. The politics of deceit and betrayal. So it will be a very interesting book. I hope so. Maybe the readers will tell me.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
we will be here, and we'll look forward to reading that book.
But I'm back now.
Karibu sana.
Yeah.
Let's start with the situation in your constituency in terms of COVID-19, and it's Garissa Township in Garissa County, and the Garissa County is one of the 10 counties that have been highlighted as those facing drought.
Yeah, I mean, COVID has affected nearly all the 47 counties. But the current surge, the Delta virus, Garissa has been affected mostly the last 3 weeks. The number of deaths, the number of people who have tested positive. And COVID is real. I mean, I'm a victim of COVID. I lost my mother last year because of COVID. I lost many friends. And unlike other parts of the country, also the COVID protocols are not very much enhanced in my constituency because of the nature of the community. I mean, the mosques are full. The hustlers you find in the marketplace are not wearing masks. And I think as a country, and I've said it on the floor of the House, is that we are missing the point. We need to forget about, this extension of curfews and all this. We need to vaccinate the people. And we need to have a very, very serious, particularly 30% of our population. We need to vaccinate close to 30 million Kenyans who are mainly in the old age bracket. And the resources have been provided for. So this is one of the things that amaze most of us, that in the last budget, we passed close to 34 billion for buying vaccines. But we hear government receiving 400,000, 500,000 donation. Of course, we have an issue in terms of where to buy. Most of the developed countries don't want to sell. They want to give priority. But I think we should forget about this extension of curfew and all that. We should focus on how many people we can vaccinate. That will save the country and save lives.
So apart from, just looking at the budget and approving the budget proposal by the National Treasury, spend 34 billion shillings on addressing COVID-19, what else should Parliament be doing to make sure that the people that they represent are getting vaccinated as fast as possible?
Parliament has three functions: representation, oversight, and budget making. Parliament has provided, apart from that 34 billion for vaccination, for buying of vaccines, Parliament has given the Minister for National Treasury a serious package in cushioning Kenyans from the COVID effects. 11 billion to the small-scale business sectors. Another, I think, 13 billion to buy equipment, ventilators, expand the oxygen manufacturing facilities in hospitals. So Parliament has done its bit, and I think we did that by end of 30th of June. So we have also looked at, in terms of taxation, the finance bill. I mean, a number of proposals of government were denied the approval by Parliament. They wanted to tax LPG, they wanted to tax borders. So all those things were rejected. So Parliament has done its bit. And I think the Minister for Finance has powers even to come back to the House and rearrange his budget. So if you ask me, the most important thing that this government must do, and many governments are doing, is to go out and make sure they buy vaccines and vaccinate as many people as possible. Secondly, and more fundamentally, of course, they are the other side of the coin. I think they should allow the private sector, with due diligence, to import vaccines, because there are many Kenyans who can afford to buy a vaccine for their family, for themselves. All that government needs to do is that they must make sure that whoever is importing the right vaccine as approved by WHO. But there are many Kenyans who can buy for their parents, can buy for their friends, for their relatives. So I think, because in other countries, if you walk, you can walk to a pharmacy, to a clinic, and you can you can pay for a vaccination. I mean, so I think government, in terms of vaccination and in terms of buying vaccines, if you ask me, they have failed, because the resources are there.
Okay. So you're talking about, you've talked about representation, oversight, and budget making, Onadwale. So if we are saying that the role of Parliament in doing those three things has been achieved, do we then say now any kind of responsibility or accountability that you would otherwise accord to Parliament then would be removed if now you're not seeing on the ground these things being played out? Are we saying, okay, look, we approve the budget, and if they then didn't do it, it has nothing to do with us. Can we talk about it with vaccines? We can talk about it with raising or lowering the debt ceiling. We can talk about it with, asking for budget when it comes to roads and infrastructure. So are you saying that on the three things for which we are responsible for, anything thereafter does not fall on our shoulders?
No. In fact, Parliament, once it appropriate resources, it's a budget-making house, appropriate resources, Parliament third function kicks in, and that's of oversight. I think parliamentary committees, the health committee, needs to now follow up and call the CS for health and ask him, and the CS for National Treasury, what happened to the money we allocated you? I mean, you had a deadline. I think the president gave a deadline of August 30th, and then extended it to December. Parliament has a role to call every day and ask what's going on. So I think if you ask me that, then Parliament has failed. Let's call it. Parliament must oversight each and every organ. Is a very, very important aspect of and function of Parliament in accordance with the Constitution.
So why is it not happening?
So I think now we are dealing with the bill on NHIF. I think Parliament, after we passed the budget, we were on recess. We are back now. Unfortunately, today we are going for another 1 month recess. And where I saw the containment last night being given out by the president, in fact, I want to raise on my seat this afternoon, ask Parliament, why should it go on recess? I mean, what are we going to do? I mean, I think the main thing was to go and be with the people, do the 2022 politics. So if you ask me, I think Parliament committees, not the plenary, respective committees have failed. They need now to follow each and every penny they have set. And I think if Parliament is listening to me one of them, we must accept that we are. But you know, if you ask me, this is a serious national and global crisis. The Minister for Finance and the Minister for Health and Government and working with other global partners should not wait for Parliament to summon them and ask them, what are you doing? I mean, that should be the last resort. I mean, any government, any democratic government of the kind we have in our country has a social and moral responsibility. Particularly, we're not talking about building a road. A road can wait. We're not talking about improving the port infrastructure. We're talking about saving the lives of your citizens. I mean, it is a cardinal duty, even in our constitution, that government must provide affordable and accessible health care to its citizens, regardless of their status. So I think Parliament will come where government has failed, but I am not seeing, all that I'm seeing from government, unfortunately, the last 1.5 years, is just to extend the curfew time and do it 60 days. I don't know why they do 60 days. We should even get used to 45, 50. So it's
What's
like
the magic of 60?
I don't know what's magic about the 60. We are not told which are the hotspots. We are not told how many we have vaccinated, how many have got the first jab, how many have got the second jab, how many. In fact, if you ask me, even the data that the Ministry of Health gives, in my opinion, is not a factual data. And I'll give you an example. I contracted COVID in, I think, September last year, around August, particularly when my mom was sick. And I remember when I went for the first test, the people from the Ministry of Health used to call me every day. Alan DUALE, where are you? I'm at home. How's your family? Are you isolated?
Yep.
And there used to be an update. And I remember the 11th day, because I didn't fall sick. The 11th day, they told me, if you have not seen anything serious, you can go back to work. But the last 3 weeks, 1 month, I had many friends and neighbors who contracted COVID. Nobody's calling them.
They're on home-based care and no more
Nobody's
follow-ups.
calling them. Nobody's monitoring them. And I had to ask even a neighbor yesterday, do you receive calls? He says, nobody. I mean, he has been there for the last 2 weeks at home. So I think there's a liturgy. So I think the whole system has just withdrawn to giving us numbers through 411. After 60 days, coming back to us, the president telling us 60 days, no public gathering. And I think it is very, very shameful that a government can give an order. And the same next day, the same people who break are the top leadership of this country, including myself. I think, so in fact, I looked at the president last night and I said, give me a break. What is the president saying? Today, ODM has a huge function I think, in Homa Bay.
Yes.
I am sure the deputy president will have his usual crowd in Karen. I'm sure by Saturday you'll see crowds. So it looks like
It's just ticking boxes. It's just, let's say because we
Absolutely.
ought to say.
You know, Mheshimiwa, there's something you mentioned, and there's a lot of truth in it with regards to the vaccines. Let me just give an alternate perspective. You see, countries like South Africa participated in the development of this vaccine, like we did. We also participated in it. Now, where perhaps the government failed at that point was in the negotiation process. South Africa has never complained of having a problem with vaccines because the very people whose vaccine they were helping process and test, they arrived at that arrangement. Israel did the same thing. We were part of that process, but somehow we didn't negotiate well enough to be able to receive. That's one. The other thing is, the vaccines we have throughout the world right now are actually for emergency use authorization. And what that means is that they've looked around, you have a serious condition that is threatening mankind, that's why they're calling it a pandemic, and there is nothing in the market that is authorized, which has gone through all the required authorization tests that is available. So they authorize this particular one for use. Now, why this one changes things is because you can't actually sell it off the counter that easily. This particular one, not others. Others which have gone through approval, you can sell. But this one, we are arguing that actually we are still testing these vaccines because all the information that we get, you're vaccinated. They still want to know what happened. And it's because of this knowledge that they keep seeking to acquire that you'll find again a country like Israel is now giving a booster shot. You had the 2, you're getting a 3rd shot. It's because they're still trying to figure it out. Now, in the world of science, it isn't unusual, especially if you have something new like COVID. There's a lot they don't know, and there's a lot they're trying to figure out. But we failed to negotiate when we're in a position of strength to ensure that part of the arrangement was, okay, we're helping you test this vaccine, but in consideration, you will also give us this priority. Somewhere that was missed out.
What role would Parliament have played in this?
No.
From the oversight point of things.
All Parliament could have done was ask questions because Parliament doesn't go to negotiate.
Okay.
Yes.
Have you heard any question coming out of Parliament, out of the House?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the number of statements which are asked every day. But, Parliament, today could have been indicted if they didn't provide the necessary resources. Parliament's role now is just to make sure why is government taking too long? We're so excited about 300,000, 400,000 given by the UK government. We go to the airport, a whole,
Delegation to
yes,
receive.
a whole delegation. The PA, the minister is there. It even touches on our sovereignty, touches on our self independence. I mean, if we cannot buy, we're talking about a budget of 3-point-something trillion, So, in my opinion, if you ask me, maybe there are people who want to get kickbacks out of these 34 billion. So, shopping around looking for where do we buy? But I think, of course, they're facing the challenge that the countries that produce vaccines wants to make sure that the first priority go to their people. So as a country, we should have developed the infrastructure, as you said in South Africa. We should have developed this infrastructure. We should have seen it a long time ago that we need to empower and the capacity of Cambry and other vaccine producing institutions.
Okay.
We talk about all these things as if, we are observers. All of us are observers. We, the citizens, are observers. Whenever we speak to a member of parliament, they speak to us as if they are also observers. Whenever we speak to a minister, they speak to us as if, it's the other department that's supposed to be doing something. But we want to come back and ask the specific role and duty that parliament has had, especially under your leadership, in making sure that these things, we have structures in place to make sure that our government is responsive to the needs of the people at all times. We are live on KTN Home, on SpiceFM and online with ADEN DUALE, Garissa Township MP, first leader of the majority in the National Assembly. He's here with us today, and we are asking ourselves, Has the 12th Parliament delivered? And then he was also leader of the 11th Parliament. We'll also look back at the tenure of the 11th Parliament. 6.7. Tell them that, right?
Yes, now they know.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Pleasure to have
What
you.
a beautiful studio, my friend.
I've been to other radio stations, but I've never seen anything like this.
Thank you, and it's very nice to be in a modern studio. Absolutely brilliant.
And I have to say, it's a very cool ambiance here in your radio room. Just for our listeners, I think it is below zero in this room here. Very Swiss temperatures.
16 degrees, cloudy conditions in Nairobi. Some parts of the sun coming out, highs of 23 and lows of 13. At 14 degrees, it's cloudy in Nyeri, highs of 22. 24 will be the high in Nakuru, it's mostly cloudy at 16. Partly sunny conditions at 14 in Eldoret, highs of 22. It's going to be mostly cloudy for most parts of Kisumu at 20, highs of 28 and lows of 18. 20 degrees and mostly cloudy in Kakamega, highs of 27. We'll go to highs of 29, mostly sunny in Mombasa. Light rain in parts of Malindi at 25, highs of 29. 27 will be the high in a mostly sunny Kampala at 21. 23 in Dar es Salaam, mostly sunny going to highs of 30. 21 will be the high in Johannesburg, it's sunny at 9. And light rain in Lagos continues, highs of 29. And 30 will be the high in Kinshasa, it's mostly cloudy at 21.
Spice up your life.
All right, still continues, guys. Hot and heavy, still in the middle of traffic hour this morning, and we see quite a lot of traffic on Mombasa Road. They're still looking at the same thing coming off of Thika Road. Eastern Bypass, however, will take you off North Airport, Outer Ring, and out in that direction towards Thika Road, using the back way to get onto the superhighway, and then back in the other direction if you're coming towards Mombasa Road. Langata Road is still heavy, as is industrial area and other parts of the city this morning. So we're trying to traverse, get in and out. It looks like the best way to do this is go out in order to get in. Right in the middle of the CBD, quite a lot of traffic this morning, so let's watch out for that. If you don't have to be within the city centre, probably not necessary to do that right now. Uhuru Highway in both directions also is packed. 'Tis the time, 'tis the hour. Let's look at what it looks like in a short while. SpiceFM KE on Twitter, text 40127.
Spice and everything nice, everything nice.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice
Good morning
FM,
to you, wherever
Nairobi.
you're tuned in around the country, around the world. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, The Situation Room on Spice FM. In the room is CT Muga Nduoko, Eric Latif, and ADEN DUALE, former leader of the majority in the National Assembly, the first big boss of the National Assembly under the current constitution. We're talking about the things that are happening. The Parliament is helping the country steer through a global pandemic, and it's affecting all of us as a nation. You said, yes, Parliament has approved when the National Treasury has come seeking funds. Parliament has approved when the Health Ministry has come seeking authorization to do a couple of things. But then, has Parliament followed up on whether these things are happening? We've had conversations like this before on this show, and we've even asked ourselves, has Parliament been captured? On the issue of whether the Health Ministry is addressing the matters, that the issues as they should be addressing them, we had a report, for example, by the Health Committee of the National Assembly on, okay, is the money being spent on the right things? There's the issue of the social protection funds. Have those funds gone to the right pockets? There's the issue of KEMSA. There's still an ongoing investigation so many months down the road by the Public Accounts Committee. And we sit back and ask ourselves, what are these people doing? What is it that people get up to go to Parliament to do on a daily basis if the loudest voices coming out of Parliament are not on getting things done right?
You know, Eric, let me take you the situation and the scenario we're in. I mean, I had the opportunity to serve in the 10th Parliament, which was more like the Westminster model, where ministers were in the House and we had the backbench, which I served both as a minister, a deputy minister, and at the backbench. Then the 2010 Constitution brought a new architecture of a pure presidential system, where you have the majority and the minority. Now, the sad thing is that today we don't have the minority, ideally, quote unquote, the opposition in the House. All these things should have been raised by the opposition or the minority side of the House. Okay? Oversight in most parliamentary jurisdiction will be the key function of the minority side, the opposition. That's why they chair the oversight committees, the Public Accounts Committee, the Public Investment Committee, the Implementation Committee that makes sure every resolution of the House is implemented by government. Now, what we are having, the scenario we're having after the handshake, is that now we have two sides of the House that all work for government. Okay? So that's number one. So government, without any fear of contradiction, there is state capture of parliament. Completely. You know, we must call a spade a spade. Chairs, for the first time, you'll find minority members of the House chairing committees that ideally should have been chaired by the government side, you know, the Education Committee, the Finance Committee. So the opposition now have gone to bed with government and they have shared even roles that ideally was for government, and you'll find now the opposition not raising issues of accountability and transparency. So that is one thing, because if you ask today, the leader of majority and the leader of minority they speak the same language on matters of national interest. I was watching the House of Commons last night on the matter of Afghanistan, and you could see the shadow minister for foreign affairs, the question and the issues that she was raising, and the question and the answers being given by the substantive minister for foreign affairs are two different things. You know, the shadow minister was putting the British government to task on its failure in working with the US over the last 20 years. What have you done? How can your investment, both militarily and everything, can be undone within 11 days? So the scenario we have in Kenya, and the framers of our constitution make it very clear that the minority must, the question they bring, the statement they bring, the officer they bring, so that is not existing. And that's why you see the Public Investment Committee is not bringing the report of the KEMSA. I mean, it's now, I think, 1.5 years. I mean, a committee cannot sit. A committee within the reading of the standing order has a definite function. I'm a member of now the Public Accounts Committee, myself. And we deal with the reports of the Auditor General. And we have a timeline that financial year 2018-2019 must be concluded on this period. So we have got a state capture, and that's why, very unfortunately, because the executive succeeded. You know, the other thing I think I need to tell you also, that on the majority side that forms government, you know, the savior, the three arms of government, the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. If you ask me, the savior for the people of Kenya is the judiciary. Why do I say so? The executive and the legislature go out to campaign together. They are more like bedfellows. Yep. You know, the animals of the same forest. So they might agree on many things. And that's why, unfortunate to say, that once the state captured the legislature, they thought it was very easy to capture the judiciary. And that's why we have myriads of court orders that this government has refused to implement.
If we look at pre-handshake times, let's look at this before. Are you then saying that there was then a clear participation by the minority, by the opposition, that would then lead to government doing what it's supposed to do? And are we now saying that now with what you're calling state capture, it's not happening anymore?
In fact,
Was there in the times where you were in a
Yes,
position,
yes.
a great, powerful position?
Yes.
Did we see that work was being done as a result of the opposition doing its job?
In fact, in the 11th Parliament, that was the most difficult time of my life as a leader of majority. When the former Code coalition was existing, the numbers were not that much different. I think URP, TNA then of the 11th Parliament and its partners in the House, we were about 170. The opposition Code then had about 130. So you remember during the former, may their soul rest in peace, the both leaders, the Honorable Nyenze and the Honorable Jacomi Dio were the minority leader and the deputy.
Yep.
You remember the security laws. At least the opposition were felt. I mean, we had to prepare. You know, they could walk out, they could go to court, they could make Parliament ungovernable. You remember?
Yeah.
But now that is a time I can tell you I had the most difficult time. One, because I had to establish a new office. It was a new office. So the first 1 year, I had to build the infrastructure, the human resource of the office of the leader of majority. I had to benchmark with other jurisdictions, like the House of Commons, the Congress. Now, what happened to the 12th Parliament? 12th Parliament, on the onset, I think the handshake took place around early 2018, around March. I mean, I went back and I slept. I had the most...
you had an easy time.
The 2.5 years I served before I exited, it was the most easy time for me because there was no opposition. There was no minority. I mean, anything I want, I could call the leader of minority, the Honorable John Bandy, to my office, call the ministers, agree on everything, particularly on bills.
So are you saying that if there's no opposition, if there's nobody really then poking you to do your job, Honorable DUALE, are you saying that if there's nobody poking you to do your job, then essentially you're not really going to do it? Anything kind of flies. And since they're not really asking questions, let's just go ahead and do whatever we feel like doing. Is that what you're saying?
You know how Parliament works is that the moment the minority or the opposition oppose a matter on principle, on basis of the national interest and the constitution, ultimately you'll get another liberal members of parliament from the government side who will agree with that, including even part of the leadership. And we say, for me, even I used to go back to the president and tell him, my friend, I think this, we are wrong on this. And I remember a good example is one time when Lenku was a minister and I think Monica Juma was a PS. They wanted to disband IPOA, you know? And this time, one time I told the president, I think you're being misadvised. This will not pass. And we used to consult that this will not pass. Even our members will gang up with the opposition. But the moment you have the opposition doing more work for government than the government-led party, then what happens is you'll have now a third force, which might not be very, very strong. And that's why they have to reconfigure the committees. You know, the most vocal members of parliament, the most critical members of parliament were removed from key committees. You know, the budget committee, the finance committee, they were taken to periphery committees. So what happens? Everybody says now, if the opposition have given up on government, so you see that's why you find quorum, lack of quorum. You know, at 2:30 when the House is convening, it has never happened. You watch even today. It has never happened. I mean, I have been in parliament for the last 15 years. So, in all parliamentary jurisdiction, the minority side, unless a government of national unity has been formed, which happened in fact, during the Grand Coalition government, we did better than now. And you know who's in the minority? Now, it depends on who's in the minority. The moment the minority is in a party like ODM, then the president's backyard, then the deputy president's backyard, then Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka's backyard. Most of those MPs who coalesce from those regions do not want to offend the position of the
Of their
big boys
leader.
who come from the region.
Yeah.
So what happens? Either they abstain or they walk out during the very crucial, critical bills, or they vote for government. So if you ask me, the handshake, there are people who talk about the handshake has brought
peace,
1, 2, 3, 4.
harmony.
1, 2, 3, 4. But they don't want to discuss the damage the handshake has done to the legislature, to governance in our country, to the rule of law, to the unity of the country, and many, many other issues. So
Maybe what it has also
Parliament is a
done-
victim, and she has asked a very good question. That what was the 11th Parliament was a parliament that the opposition was very strong. You remember they used to walk for Parliament to the courts.
Yes.
You never see that. Today you'll see, I hardly had the leader of minority, Jacob Mudio, to second a government bill. But you watch, all government bills and all agenda of government are moved by the leader of majority, seconded by the leader of minority. It doesn't happen anywhere in any parliamentary
It
jurisdiction.
shows there's harmony. I'm thinking what it
No, it doesn't show there's harmony. It shows there's a serious
what it
dysfunction.
exposes for me, which may be a positive on if you look at it this way, is it shows that our parliament is not truly independent. We are supposed to have 3 independent arms of government: the executive, the judiciary, the legislature. The legislature drawing its powers directly from the people, the executive doing the same, and also the judiciary doing the same. But here we are clearly being shown that the person who occupies that seat in Harambee House and State House has bigger say in the house along Parliament Road than anybody else. That therefore you have been elected by the people of Garissa Township, but you do not owe your allegiance to the people of Garissa Township. You owe your allegiance to either the leader of URP or the leader of TNA. And that is a failure of Parliament.
Yeah, let me put it in this way, and I think I totally agree with you. In the Constitution, in the architecture of our governance structure, within the 3 arms of government, the 3 arms of government must be independent. In fact, our Parliament, borrowing from a presidential system of government, no member of Parliament represents government there. No member of Parliament. You are there in Parliament to deal with the function given to you under Article 94, 95, 96, up to 97 for both houses. That you must oversight, you must represent your people, and you must legislate. And in legislation, you must look at what is offensive to your people, number 1, to your region, to your community. In terms of representation, you must bring issues concerning your neighborhood until you reach issues of the country. And in oversight, the architecture of our constitution has even given powers, all the powers of budget making to Parliament. When the minister tables his estimates, Parliament can throw it away and say, you have allocated more roads to this region, we are removing and we are putting here. These are more deserving. Because Parliament does what's called public participation, which is very central to our constitution. But as I told you earlier, parliamentarians, the legislature, and the executive do campaign together. They either look for to grab power and form the next government. A group ends up in the opposition benches and a group ends up in government. And there is the element of the ethnic politics. So there are people who come to Parliament, and every member of Parliament, when he comes to Parliament, he wants to make sure that he gets re-elected. And how do you get re-elected? Who has the resources? You have the powers. In fact, parliamentarians have the powers to allocate resources to their constituencies, including the CDF. But there is a bigger thing. Even me, when I was a leader of majority, I believed in it. That because we campaigned as an entity called Jubilee, we had a manifesto. We must consider how to fund that manifesto when we are dealing with the budget. It happens in all jurisdictions, even in the US. I mean, the Democrats will agree with the Biden administration in terms of what their manifesto was. But But the scenario we have in our country, and I agree with the people, and I need to tell you that there was a capture in a number of senses. One, there's certain segment and critical number of members of parliament who come from constituencies where people are not elected on the basis of the individual and his capacity and his development record, but they're elected on the basis of the big boy from that region. Talk of the Rift Valley, Nyanza, Central Kenya, and maybe Ukambani. So those people, their leaders are outside the house, but so they will always do
the bidding of
the
those
bidding.
leaders.
So they must support it. They will even tell you that we have instructions.
The way you feel
They don't have instructions from the people, but they have instructions from an
From
individual.
the individual.
Right.
That is one. Number two, then the moment, like the Jubilee, now that it has disintegrated and now I think it's not holding together. But when we were holding together, we had 172 members of parliament. Okay? And when we have a very critical government bill, even if it is against the wishes of the people, they are whipped by the party leader. We have a PG and we are told this is a position. So if out of the 172 members, if 100 are in the house, everything will pass. So I think the ethnic politics we have in our country, the big man syndrome we have within our political structure, also plays a very big role in how a member becomes independent. Very few members. I'll give you my case. I mean, I've been elected 3 times, and I've been elected on 3 different political parties. That tells you, from the region where I come from, is about the individual. Of course, we have our own party primaries. There's a clan factor in our region.
Yep.
So that's another. That is
a primary.
That's another primary. I mean, that's another primary. The guys, apart from those of us who come from very cosmopolitan constituencies like Garissa Township or Wajir Town or Mandera Town, the rest of the other colleagues from the pastoral community also are victims of the clan, negotiated democracy, the so-called, which is, if you see, that also has led to low caliber of leadership coming to the house, because the clan does not look at the competency, the education background, the history of the individual. They say this is one of our own. So we have a serious issue within the chemistry of the Kenyan politics.
Can I ask you, you remained leader of the majority even after the handshake for some time, right?
Yes.
Had you not been removed from this position, let's say you were still leader of the majority today, would you still feel that a state of capture had taken place? Would you still say some of the things that you're saying today had you not been removed from that position?
I will say the same thing, and I said it. But when I was a leader of majority, I mean, I had the opportunity to engage with the executive at the highest level, with the president, and say, this, I think, is not in the interest of the country. This will not. I'll face headwinds, particularly in the 11th Parliament. I remember we did a lot of amendments to the security laws, from a number of quarters. But one of the reasons, in fact, that could have brought me into loggerheads with my party leadership, the rank and the file of my party, who believed in the BBI. It was open for me that I was not ready, even if I was the leader of majority, to move the BBI bill. I was not ready.
Why?
The reason was the BBI had absolutely nothing for the people that I represented. I'm the patron of the Pastoralist Parliamentary Group. I am even now the chairman of the Northeastern Members of Parliament. So when I look at the BBI in its structure and form, and I'm sure you heard me saying that you are, for example, you want to bring 70 constituencies. What is there for the people in the north, compared to the 2011 delimitation of boundaries? So you've asked me a very good question. There are 2 things, and I need to make it very clear. There are times when you hold a very coveted office, you have to balance. I mean, when you're the leader of majority, you're the leader of government business. So you have to juggle as if you're holding the lever as the late John Michuki used to say. But I had a history of both serving in government and then serving at the backbench in the 10th Parliament. If you ask me today, I mean, if you look at the statements I brought to Parliament from the issues of Kenya losing money and the failure of CMA, if you look at how the independent power producers, is a very big inquiry now in Parliament, how the independent power producers are making Kenyans pay for extra power bills. If you look at the many Kenyans who are have no ID cards because of double registration. So now I'm back to where I can fit.
Now you're a true voice of the people.
No, now I have to be again very careful because now again in Parliament I'm a ranking member where I sit. So still being a holder of a constitutional office for 7.5 years, I still behave with a lot of decorum in the house and outside the house.
Do you feel that is tying you down?
Which one?
The fact that you're a ranking member, the fact that there's that history of your immediate former leader of the majority. Do you feel that sometimes that holds you back from?
I think it doesn't hold me back.
Pushing what you'd like to push.
I think it doesn't hold me back from pushing critical national issues. Okay, it doesn't hold me back. In fact, the moment I raise a matter, the House listens to me, and members of both of the sides of the House agree with me. But it holds me back because I cannot join into any type of discussion because a member can have and say, you are the ranking member.
Something that has been niggling at the back of my mind, and when you mentioned that you are the leader of the Northeastern Caucus, I'm putting it in my own words.
Yes.
I had a light bulb moment. The thing that particular region is known for, among other things, is conflict.
Yes.
In the time that you have been in leadership, as a member of Parliament and as a leader within Parliament, tell me what it is that Parliament has done to stem this and to bring it to a halt, because it rears its ugly head cyclically. Every time you have an election nearby, it escalates.
I mean, that region, and it's not only our region. You'll find it in the Horn of Africa. And a classical example is what is happening in Ethiopia now because of the complex ethnic configuration, So if you go to our region, there are certain dynamics that occur that leads to this conflict. One of them is a current drought. Drought is a recipe for conflict. People move the animals. The moment a pastoralist feels his life and that of his livelihood is in danger, he moves to the next. So he moves to the next, and the next maybe is another pastoralist. So there's a scarce of pasture, there's scarce of water. That happens. Two, there is a historical nature of clan hegemony, clan conflict. That this is majority, the element of majoritarian and minoritarian really exists within the pastoralist setup. Then the proliferation of arms. And above all, if you ask me, successive governments, including our own government, security agencies have failed. Today, if you ask me, the number of boots on the ground in northeastern and in the pastoral areas is 50% of the boots in the rest of the other country. So the scars, the soldiers are there. But again, is how effective are they?
But this is why I brought in Parliament, Mheshimiwa, because the powers, and you stated very clearly and categorically the powers that Parliament has. One, you can allocate a budget, meaning you can more or less determine.
Absolutely.
You can determine that this is going to happen. But even more importantly, oversight. You have the capacity to push the agenda to the point where it actually achieves what you intended.
No. I think where you're getting wrong is you need to look at to look at the historical marginalization and of the successive governments in Kenya, and look at it in the context of the atrocities that has happened in that region. You know, it is historical. It's about government. It's about government, not even about parliament. Let me give you a very clear example. The framers of the Constitution of 2010 felt that this region must catch up with the rest of the country. An equalization, a deliberate fund was put called Equalization Fund.
Yes.
With a sunset period of, I think, 10 years to address water, electricity, roads, and health. Because if you do roads, you reduce conflict. And it has happened. Government built the road between Nairobi and Garissa, built the road between Garissa and Modogash, Isiolo, all the way to Marsabit. There are no conflicts. It's even easier for security agents to reach to a conflict prone.
Yes.
That equalization fund, up to today, has not been actualized. Parliament has passed. Every year we put the budget. So it's a deliberate. And what have they done? I think 2 years ago what they did, they said, no, this is equalization. There are many other parts of Kenya
that need to be equalized.
So they diluted it. That's number two. You know, they talk of disarmament. Disarmament. You can't have, for example, in Nairobi, you can't have one part of Nairobi where guys have guns. But particularly with this government, so there's a deliberate government policy, successive government policy. The way, you know, I say, Coast region is known for drugs. How come successive governments don't want to deal with the drug menace unless government is part of that? So there's a systemic government failure, marginalization, even devolution. What has happened even in devolution is the first part year of our government, the 11th Parliament, government used to release money to people. Don't be cheated. This administration, particularly these 5 years, you might blame governors. They have got their own issues of ethics and corruption. But they only receive, what do they receive? They only receive recurrent. You know, they only receive recurrent. They're not receiving
the money that they should be
receiving. They all get the National Treasury. So, but I agree with you, the issue of, and I think you need to read many people who have written about the systemic marginalization of people in the North. And that, today, if you ask me the North, and you guys are aware, schools have been closed for the last 3 years because of insecurity. Health centers. In fact, Garissa County, 67% of the children of Garissa County, school-going children, are in my constituency. Because all the other 5 constituencies, they either border the Ethiopia or Somalia. So schools have closed. Health centers are not there. People cannot move. There is the element of insecurity. So there's a lot of dejection. You come here, some don't get their ID cards. So I think we can discuss the issue of the North and the pastoralist.
We should actually now make a whole conversation about the North
yes.
and representation in the North and making sure that there's equalization and equity that goes
and you don't know what's happening? And then, you know, the most absurd thing
Watch out.
is the president calling a few guys from the big tribes and say we can form the next government and live out 70% of Kenyan landmass.
Thank you for joining us, DUALE. Asante sana. Come again soon.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.